Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today for our panel discussion, tips and tricks for becoming a more strategic ops pro. We have a stellar panel assembled. I'll have these folks introduce themselves in just a moment. But before we dig into the actual content, just wanted to clear a few housekeeping items. So know that a recording of this webinar will be distributed to your inbox via email within 24 hours of the end of the live broadcast. So you're welcome to scribble furious notes, but if you miss any incredible insights, know that the recording will be made available to you. You can submit questions throughout the presentation by using the window on the right-hand side of the Livestorm portal. There are two places to interact. There's a chat area as well as a questions area. So please be mindful of where you're putting your questions, just so we can, again, identify them as they're coming in and answer them accordingly. All right. So now let's meet the panel. We will start from left to right. So Rosalind, if you wouldn't mind just telling the audience a bit, well, tell them who you are, the company that you work for, why you pursued a career in ops, and then the professional skill that you're working on right now, because we're all constantly working to improve. So if you could take it away, that'd be great.
Sure. So thank you for having me. I'm Rosalind Santa Elena. I'm currently the head of revenue operations here at Clary. I have a long career in operations, and quite frankly, I don't remember how I landed in operations, but I've always had sort of an operational mindset around, just trying to build structure, in the chaos, make sense of the chaos. So what am I working on right now? So exciting news. I'm actually working on a revenue operations school. So more to come on that, but I don't want to let too much of the details out of the bag. So we'll leave folks to wonder what's next.
Oh, that's exciting. Awesome. Yes. All right, Daryl, you want to go next?
Yeah, hey everyone. I'm Daryl Alfonso. My background, I've been in marketing operations in some shape or form for, 13 plus years now. Both all in, mostly in startups and then in mid-size, and now at enterprise. So my current role is marketing operations manager at Amazon Web Services. And the best way to think of our team is we own all of the sort of marketing technology that powers over 1,000 marketers. And our team mission is to empower marketers to create exceptional digital experiences for our customers. And glad to be here.
Awesome. Thanks again for joining, Daryl. And Jeff, take it away.
All right. My name is Jeff Ignacio. I'm the head of revenue and growth operations at Upkeep. We're a Series B funded maintenance management software. I've been in go-to-market support strategy for roughly 8 or 9 years now in different roles. First in sales finance as the finance partner at Google, and then taking on data analytics roles since then in sales operations. Now I'm in a full-fledged revenue operations role where we're responsible for process optimization, enablement, revenue enablement, insights, reporting, advisory, and all sorts of systems architecture across 3 different groups: marketing, sales, and customer success. And oftentimes we're also supporting finance. So we really have our hands in a lot of cookie jars at Upkeep. Why RevOps? I really enjoy delivering value to a company and turning it from a startup to a scale up. That journey is incredibly difficult and go through a lot of twists and turns. And what I really enjoy about it is every year, every quarter is somewhat different. So it's always a bit of a fun, challenging time to solve through. Skill I'm working on today, we actually just brought in a new CMO and a new CRO. So we're actually deconstructing what we have in place and reconstructing something new. So a lot of wheels turning on the enablement front, as well as on the systems and process, and couldn't be more excited about doing that.
Yeah, and I'm sure you have some useful insights to share as a result of that experience as well, at least some raw insights. So again, thank you so much for joining. I'll just do a quick intro of myself as well. My name is Aaron Landgraf. I'm the head of marketing at Syncry. We provide a complete data automation platform for operations pros to help them, take back control over their data and put it to more effective use so they can maximize its value. And we serve, operations pros, and no matter where they sit in the organization: sales, marketing, revenue, customer success. Again, all with a no-code platform. And I'll tell you a bit more about that at the end of the presentation today. But really, the reason we organize this panel is to, help people understand what steps they can take on the journey to becoming more strategic. And as you listen to the panelists share their experiences and share their insights, I think it's just useful to ground yourself in a few different realities. If you are on this journey, there are definitely things that you can do in a given day, in a given month, to position yourself more strategically within the organization that you serve today. And then I also think it's important that, strategic operators also just exhibit a different set of behaviors that often come from experience as you mature in your role. So keep a careful eye and perhaps an open ear out for, again, the behaviors that this panel of operational leaders is exhibiting inside of their organizations, and see how you might be able to replicate that on your journey to becoming more strategic. So Elizabeth, if you don't mind helping me now kill the presentation, we'll get into the actual panel discussion section of the panel. Thank you very much. All right, so Rosalind, we'll start with you. If you follow social media, or even if you're looking inside of your organization and paying attention to what's happening with operations across the company, it seems like operations is having a bit of a moment. So from your perspective, what's going on and what has changed?
Yeah, definitely. I like to think that it's people like Daryl and Jeff and I that are causing this moment for ops, but unfortunately, it's probably can't take all of the credit. I think there's a number of factors that have really highlighted the need for a strong operational foundation. Obviously, there's the rise of the recurring revenue model, right, where growth is not only coming from net new acquisition, but now from your installed base. So I think there's much more focus on aligning with the customer cycle, right? It's more of a loop versus just a straight line. There's also, there's just much more complex selling motions and kind of how we sell in different organizations. And there's more demands, right? There's more demands from prospects and customers. People like us as consumers are much smarter, right? We're much more intelligent. We're much more demanding of the folks that we're going to do business with. So that really requires better alignment of your operations with the buyer and your customer. And there's better alignment across the customer journey, right? Better rules of engagement, better handoffs. Another factor, I think, why we're seeing sort of this rise in revenue operations is the technology, right? The tech stack is a beast to manage for revenue. And I think because of that, you're also seeing this rise of revenue operations. And then, of course, the need for accurate, comprehensive, real-time data and insights, right, with the speed at which business is moving and changing. So I think with that recurring revenue model, the more complex selling motions, the more demands from your customers requiring that alignment, better rules of engagement, better handoffs, and then there's the technology and the data. So I think for all of those things sort of combined, right, companies are really realizing, especially coming off a year like last year, that those who have a really strong operations foundation are going to be at a huge advantage over those that don't, right? The ones that do are the ones that have the data, have the insights, and are able to make decisions quickly. And then they have that structure in place where they can pivot, right, wherever necessary, and they can actually execute upon those changes.
Excellent. That is a great foundation for the rest of this conversation, and we'll work to unpack a lot of those insights as we go. Daryl, a follow-up question for you. You're in marketing operations. We're talking a lot about revenue teams. Oftentimes revenue is associated with sales, but how do you think about all the I'll say love and attention that RevOps is getting from your standpoint in marketing ops?
Yeah, so I think it's all good. I think any focus on the importance of operations is going to be great for the overall industry and for the overall profession. Regardless of if it's marketing ops, which is me, and then I know that Rosalind and Jeff are in revenue operations. I think historically, ops folks in general have been more of order takers and more of people that just sort of did the back office work. And what we're seeing now is we're now seeing this transition of ops into strategic partners and strategic advisors. And I love seeing that. And it's just like Rosalind said, it's the companies that have operations down and can get it right are the ones that are going to win in this year and in the coming years. Because I think what we're seeing in the industry is that there is so much, it's so dynamic, and companies need to pivot really quickly. And it's not too difficult to say, hey, look, I think we need to change our strategy. I think we need to pivot and go for a different market. It's not too tough to do that, to say that. It's tough to actually do it. And if you've got a streamlined operational team that can, shift gears quickly and, put together processes in a repeatable and scalable way, you're going to be leagues ahead of the competition. So I think in summary, all of the recognition this industry is getting is really awesome. I'm so honored to be a part of it. I'm a big follower of Jeff and Rosalind and their content. So overall, all good stuff, I think.
Awesome. And Jeff, I want to use this opportunity now to shift gears a bit and start getting a bit more specific around, what it takes to be operationally excellent and what it takes for an organization to really take advantage of operational excellence and driving a scalable and predictable go-to-market. On the topic of data, I know you're going through a lot of change right now inside of your organization, but what is your ideal state with revenue data and what's preventing you from achieving that today?
So lately I've been trying to craft a definition or a Webster's version of our data stack and how it works together. So I'm going to probably botch this, but the infrastructure and ability to understand the state of the business, to operate the business, to understand trends and patterns, forecasting with information that is accessible, secure, and up to date. Now, there are a number of things that not necessarily preventing upkeep, but at large in my experience over time, I boil it down to a couple of constraints. Uniformity and definition at each level of the organization. Is everyone defining what they believe is revenue or targets, or however they're trying to roll up their data together? Do they have the same definition across each level? Secondly, fragmented systems with asynchronous or non-interoperability. And hence you create this effect where you have these archipelagos or silos of data and not necessarily a uniform landmass. Investment constraints and talent constraints. Those are some things that I think organizations constantly face to overcome in order to have a uniform data stack.
And when you think about prioritizing your efforts today relative to that list of constraints, where are you spending your time?
For me personally, we have 2 new team members on my team, so we're spending a lot of time ramping them up, getting them quick wins and increasing their credibility to their external and internal stakeholders. And so once they understand, layering on business acumen and have the credibility in those quick wins, then we can start tackling on some meatier projects. So part of my role is to get them ramped up and to provide them air cover and help them prioritize. That's where I'm currently spending a lot of my time.
Got it. Okay. And Rosalind, this may be a bit of an embellishment, but I feel like you speak perhaps with more operations leaders than anyone else on the planet. So what are you seeing emerge as best practice when it comes to revenue data and dealing with some of the constraints that Jeff laid out for us?
Yeah, so I think now more than ever, right? Data is so critical, right, to helping drive better outcomes. I think both Daryl and Jeff mentioned this around, insights and being able to pivot and that type of thing. But I think there's data everywhere, right? There's so much data, and what do you do with it, right? And how do you even go about tackling it? So I think a lot about just, my recommendation is always when it comes to operations is really just get back to the basics, right? I think about, building a data dictionary. We talk about that a lot. And Jeff mentioned this as well, is just getting alignment on the definitions of things, right? Literally get the terms defined and used and viewed the same way across the company, because how many times do teams, come to a meeting and they have a totally different definition of pipeline, right? I think pipeline is probably one of the biggest terms. It's like, oh, everybody has a slightly different nuanced definition. But so build that data dictionary. Sounds really simple, but it does take time to go and build it. Right. And then then you build a data map, right? With all of this technology that we're talking about. You talked a little bit about silos and such. So really building a data map with all of the technology available. Look at, all the many people touching the data. There's entry points and exit points. I think it's helpful to really see where, where's the data coming from? Right? Who's touching it, where it's being edited, where it's being updated, how it's being manipulated, right? And where is it going, right? And who's using it. So have sort of that intricate kind of spider web of a map. It doesn't have to be super detailed, but just start to lay out some of that foundation. And then I think really important also is, establishing like a data governance, right? I think we're seeing that reside more and more with revenue operations, just because we have all of the data around go-to-market. But obviously, you might have an IT, or you might even be blessed with a data team. But usually it's RevOps. But at least somebody, right? Somebody needs to be the keeper of the data in order to keep the data in sync. The other thing I would say about just getting back to basics is integration. Right? Integration and automation, right? We always try to automate wherever you can, right? With all this great technology that we have, there should be, and I say should be, but very few cases where data needs to be, extracted from one place and then manually added or uploaded to another. I think we all are guilty of that, exporting things from Salesforce and then doing something with it and then uploading it through a data load back into the system. But to the extent that you can automate and integrate, making sure your systems are talking to each other and the data is flowing, right? Because I think the best thing you can do is look for ways to integrate and automate. I think that's sort of my best practices. Because when I think about, the best, it sounds super simple to go back to basics. It's a lot of work to do all of that, but it's got to be done, because that's the only way that you're going to get to that sort of nirvana state for data, right? Having data that's accurate, it's comprehensive, it's real time, and it's, available, right, to the right people at the right time.
Yeah, Rosalind, oftentimes when I'm chatting with folks about data governance, it feels like a very heavy kind of top-down activity. So how would you encourage to think about data governance as perhaps something more organic, or at least something that doesn't, feel like it's as heavy of an investment?
Yeah, I mean, I think just having even that data dictionary, having those terms where everybody can stare at it like a reference point, right? So you have, we talk a lot about policy and process, and governance is really about policy, right? And enforcing that policy. But I think even just having that dictionary and be able to have something written down that you can point to that folks have aligned upon helps with that governance.
Got it. Okay. Well, I want to shift gears again. We've laid out the opportunity. We've discussed some of the challenges related to that opportunity for operations professionals. And now I want to start, really crystallizing the path forward that the folks on this call today can take to really become, strategic within their businesses today, and, ultimately accelerate their careers because of the strategic role they're playing within the enterprise. So Daryl, you've had a pretty broad spectrum of experiences at companies of different sizes. And often the distance between what we'll just call operational excellence and current state can seem pretty daunting. So how have you prioritized where to get started in the various companies you've worked at?
Yeah, I like this question. So I first wanted to say that I think that the progression of your career in ops is a really interesting one. And I kind of saw that earlier on, when you're more junior, you're sort of looking for like checklists, and you're looking for things, and you're asking other people how to solve problems, or what's the best way to set up your systems, And so like, let's say you're integrating a map in a CRM, or you're having some data issues. You're always looking for, hey, what's the best practice, or have you seen this before? I think as you progress in your career, what you'll find is, and this is what I love about ops, you're tackling problems that not very many people have tackled before, and sometimes it's for the first time, especially if you're in a unique company. And at Amazon, our scale is kind of unique. So a lot of the projects that I work on, they're sort of for the first time that any company has gone through it. They usually deal with scale, and I find that so exciting because it's very pioneering. It's sort of, hey, no one really knows how to do this. What's a framework that I can try to figure this out on my own? So I think that what I'm trying to say is, as you go on through your career, it's important to not always try to look for other people for the answer, but to have some questions that you ask yourself to help you you and your team get through it together. So some of the ways that I like to do that, and if we're thinking about operational excellence, I like to think about the customer experience, and there's different kinds of customer experience, right? So you've got the external customer, so what they're seeing on your website and in your email, and how they're experiencing your company on the phone. And then you have your internal customer, which is your stakeholders. So like your marketers or your salespeople, and then trying to remove friction from all of those processes. I'm in marketing operations, and one of the things is, marketers run a lot of events. So if you look at how long it takes a marketer to set up a webinar or a live event, what's that time, the average time that it takes them to set it up? And then ask if they can do that 2x or 3x next year, and finding ways to make that possible and streamlined. I think that's a really good start in finding, in trying to pursue operational excellence, right? Because the more that you can streamline, repeat, and templatize your work and automate your work, the more you can spend time on more strategic objectives. You know what I mean? So if there's like something that you spend 3 hours a week doing, and you can automate it or templatize it, that 3 hours you just get back, it tends to go, if you're good at what you do, it tends to go directly toward strategic thinking and planning, which is so important if you want to make that shift from the order taker, sort of just doer, to that strategic advisor type role. So that's the advice that I would give for that.
I think that's so impactful, and it does take a bit of a mindset shift that, when you are given a request, instead of thinking about how quickly can you execute on a specific request, how do you think about, templatizing the approach so that you're able to manage more of these requests as they come in, because you are otherwise not a scalable resource, right? There's so many hours in the day. So if you have to take, to your point, 3 hours with every single request that comes in, eventually you're going to become a firefighter, and you won't be able to get your head above. I'll mix my metaphors here. You won't be able to become as strategic as you want to be, because you're always flooded with inbound requests. That's a great insight, Daryl. And I think we'll cover more of this in the tips and tricks section, which is exciting. So Jeff, last question before we transition over to the specific tips and tricks from our panel. How do you help people in your organizations really understand the importance and impact of having clean, interoperable data? We just talked about processes. Obviously, data is part and parcel to supporting effective processes. So yeah, how do you think about it, and how do you get others to align with your point of view on this?
I love having the goal of clean, interoperable data in mind. And the way I think about it, it has to be first and foremost positioned with the end in mind. I always think of Stephen Covey always says, think with the end in mind. And so what's in it for me is such a powerful motivator, particularly at the manager or at the exec level, or for those who are using data at the front lines. It has to be something meaningful to them and what they do in their day-to-day. And so to me, data is actually just a means to an end, and therefore it's a commitment. The commitment to bring insights to require. And I think when you're working with the folks who need that data in mind, those who are putting it together, you're going to have an investment in mind, whether that is in the time, skill, or the cost. And that's not in many job descriptions around revenue operations, but the task of having to sell to your stakeholders on what it takes to build the infrastructure in order to deliver the insights they're looking for, that has to be done first. Have the infrastructure in place so that way you can deliver the insights that they're asking for. And so I often spend my time clarifying the problems that we're trying to solve. Oftentimes we'll hear a question from an executive or a manager, and too often there's a tendency or a desire to run off and go answer the question. But we need to maybe take a step back and understand the context of why they're asking those questions, and then start to anticipate what questions they're asking for. So therefore, when we walk into meetings, we already have a perspective in mind because we've thought about the questions they're likely to ask, brought the answers to the table, spent the time before that meticulously going over the detail and understanding what's going on between the lines so that we can deliver those set insights.
I think that's interesting as well, that it's a transition point from just presenting data, either raw data or a report that has data, to actually interpreting the data based on your experience and sharing that interpretation and those insights with recommendations, right? That is I think perhaps the fundamental difference between somebody who is tactical and somebody who is strategic in their engagements with cross-functional stakeholders. Interesting. Rosalind, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask, I think we talked a lot about data, automation, integration, keeping everything sort of in sync, and how does it sort of all tie together? So how does Syncry help with that? And I would love to get maybe a little bit more insight there.
Yeah. So I won't go in depth here, only because I want to make sure we're able to, get to the rich content of this panel. But so many of the challenges that this panel has brought up today appear in very consistent forms, perhaps with different words, across the majority of specifically technology companies that we interact with as customers, right? And reason is that we're starting to see alignment and standardization on tech stacks, right? You have your CRM, you have your marketing automation platform, you have your ticketing and support system, you have your product database, you have your customer success software. And so when you think about, as an example, aligning on the data definitions across those standard systems, what Syncry, the core innovation of Syncry is that we do that work of presenting a unified model of that data for you so that you don't have to invest your time and energy at getting your systems to talk to one another. And then once you have that unified data model, what we then allow you to do is get your systems, one, all talking the same language, and two, all sharing the same complete, accurate data so that your tech stack is actually interoperable. And that's why I shared that, or I asked that question of Jeff, because if all of your trusted data is only available within your CRM, then what do the systems who perhaps don't have access to that CRM do if they don't have complete, accurate views of your customer data, right? So what Syncry does is we really help our customers create a unified and consistent view of their data that they can manage. And then we allow them to build on top of that data the set of automations that are governed and accurate and consistent across systems so that you're actually improving data quality and automating processes in the same steps. And as a result, we're able to, again, really help customers make sense of what's happening from a go-to-market standpoint with consistent data and accurate reports and ultimately insights that are shared across teams. So in a nutshell, that is Syncry, and I'll share more towards the tail end of this conversation. Yeah, thanks, Rosalind, for that question. I appreciate it.
So I figure you see so many customers, all of your customers and some of the challenges that they have, and sort of wonder if it sort of resonates with the audience as well as with the panel, right? It's the same challenges we all have.
That's right. And it is perhaps shockingly consistent. And it kind of makes sense because we're all dealing with integration challenges. We're all dealing with struggles with data definitions because every system describes customers in slightly different ways. And again, the mission of Syncry is to help simplify and automate some of that work so that you as operators can focus on the higher value work of actually gleaning insights from the data and driving more productive customer journeys, more effective sales conversations, et cetera. So Elizabeth, do you mind flipping back over to the slides for me? I will share my screen if I can. And there we go. Great. Oh, hold on, webinar transition issue. The joys of being both a moderator and the infrastructure handler. One sec. Too many things going on at once. All right, try that again. Oh, I see what's up. Okay. There we go. All right, well, Rosalind, as I figure out the infrastructure, do you mind actually just diving into your tips and tricks, and I'll support you with slides here in a second?
Yeah, no problem.
Thank
So
you.
tips
Thank
and
you.
tricks for moving from tactical to strategic. For me, it's three main things. It's get your house in order, get educated and empowered, and get in the right mindset. So what does all that mean? I think of get your house in order, meaning, get, again, back to the basics, build the infrastructure, right? Look at your policies, your processes, your systems, your data, right? Because you can't be fighting fires all the time. If you're fighting fires all the time, all you're going to be is reactive. You'll never be proactive. You get sort of stuck in this flow, right? But once you have a good, solid infrastructure in place, you can be more proactive, less reactive, which means that you have more time. And I think Daryl mentioned this as well, as you have more time to be analytical, right? And strategic versus always trying to be task focused or tactical. And I know that's easier said than done, but you can start to build a lot of that infrastructure to start to free up more of your time. My second tip is around, get educated, get empowered, right? Educate yourself so that you can be more strategic thinking, right? You can't be strategic if you don't understand some of the key things about how you go to market. Right? If you think about it, you need to understand the strategy, the product, and the business. Those are sort of my big pillars, right? If you think about the strategy, you've got to understand what the corporate strategy is, how it translates to go to market, what's the operating plan, who are you selling to, what are your key objectives, what are the initiatives, all those things that sort of go under the strategy bucket, to really educate yourself and empower yourself around that. Obviously around the product, right? This is kind of a no-brainer, but you've got to know your product better than anyone. What the product does, what's the value it brings to the market, what's the business problem it solves, what's the value prop, right? Why does it matter, right? To understand really that. Why does the product matter? And last thing is the business, right? So understand all aspects of the business. Again, sort of a no-brainer, but understanding how you go to market, how you drive demand, how you create pipeline, how do you win against competition, how do you close and retain customers, and how do you expand revenue? So really knowing everything about your about the business, about the prospect, about your customer. And then that my last tip is really just get in the right mindset. And what I mean by this is just try to start thinking strategically versus tactically, right? Take the extra few minutes to really understand the issues, kind of go that extra mile, right? Understand the business challenge. I think Jeff mentioned that he's constantly asking, like, what's the use case? What are we trying to solve, right? But you got to think about understanding the business challenge, understanding what you're trying to solve. Don't just report on the data, right? Analyze the data. We always talk about this a lot. Tell the story, right? Don't just provide reports, provide insights. So there's all those type of little things that you can just start to get your mindset around. And it doesn't mean that you're going to spend hours and hours doing this. It's literally spend the extra 10 or 15 minutes and start to move in the right direction.
Awesome. Thank you, Rosalind. And sorry for the technical mishaps along the way there.
No problem. These are always on my brain, so
Yeah, very good.
no problem at all.
Awesome. Jeff, let's start with you. You're on mute, Jeff.
Yep.
Technical difficulties. Finding the mute button. Tip number one, find the mute button. I'd say, know the business. know the goals of the business and how to measure those goals. Because without really knowing that, you're not really sure which direction you're headed in. And I think oftentimes folks in RevOps mistake their roles as technical roles or process optimization roles, when in reality, you're trying to solve towards these goals in mind. So really layer on that business acumen as early as possible. My second tip is to build credibility by winning early and winning often. And what that means is to deliver on the requests brought to you and your team and going beyond that. That's the second tip. The third tip, here we go. So that credibility in mind allows you to have a partnership with your executive stakeholders and with the folks in the front line. They can come to you as a worry-free service. My last tip is to have a sustainable and growth mindset, because oftentimes we're solving from within a position of constraints. And so rather than thinking through those constraints, having a growth mindset actually thinks that anything and everything is possible. And when you have that, you're able to really unlock, I think, some powerful, creative problem solving that you probably didn't think you were capable of before you started on your journey. So for any RevOps pro that's on this call today, come in with a growth mindset, because you can't operate from one of lack of abundance, in my personal opinion.
I think that's interesting too, Jeff, because that growth mindset, I think, is very well aligned with Daryl's insight around figuring out ways to templatize and automate your work so that you can scale. So not only are you scaling yourself, you're helping your business scale as well. So it is just an important shift in mindset. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Daryl, take us home.
Yeah, sure. So my top tips. So I think that you really need to get on the hook for as high a level reporting as possible. And two things happen. One is that you automatically get exposure and sort of visibility with leadership, because you're at the table helping them dissect these reports. And the other thing that I find happens often is you naturally get asked, what are we going to do about these issues that are surfacing from the reports? Even though you may not be accountable for marketing, or you may not be accountable for hitting sales goals, you're automatically part of that conversation. And I think it's such a fantastic way to build your influence, but and also learn about, hey, what are the executives doing? And how are they making these business decisions? My next one is aligning your roadmap, the things that you're working on through the year, with key stakeholders, especially with leadership. What you don't want to do, and I see this often, is you don't want to be the ops person that's like going rogue and building their own sort of mad scientist operational system, and you get obsessed with it, and then it's completely out of line with what the business is needs are. So you want to make sure that what you're working on, your boss approves of what you're working on, and your skip level approves of what your boss is kind of working on overall. So I think it's so important that everyone's in alignment with what you're doing. And then lastly, right, the way that I think of when you're trying to build processes, I say is, it's thinking long-term and scalable. But the way that you do that is you build with a training mindset. And what that means is you build a process or you build a tool, whatever it is, with the intent that you're going to teach someone else how to do it and how to take over. So when you do that, you'll find that the way that you build things are much more elegant and they're much more clear, right? And they're not going to be riddled with your specific nuances that and ways that you think. It'll be more of something that a lot of other people can use, and that you can pull out and kind of plug in a more modular way. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, those are my 3 tips.
Awesome. Yeah, and I see Nick, who's the CEO of Syncry, also commenting in the chat feed, and he shared an insight that I experienced over the course of my career as well, which is that when you are engaging with executives, more often than not, they expect and they want you to share insights that don't exist in their brains, right? They're not nearly as close to the problem as you are. And when you start to think about yourself, again, as somebody who is uniquely capable of providing insights that the executive team otherwise wouldn't be capable of gleaning, it can be very empowering. And you start small, prove incremental value, and then you start getting invited to more and more of these conversations. And it happened to me over the course of my career in product marketing that, as I got used to this motion of sharing insights with the executive team, all of a sudden there was a pull created where they were bringing me into these conversations. And again, it's very empowering and rewarding, and also helps the company scale over time too. So these parallels between ops and other functions is also very clear to me. So thank you, panel, for these awesome insights. I really appreciate it. We are at 10:45 now. And so what I'd like to do is transition to a bit of a Q&A. So again, there's a questions tab on the right hand. That's the second tab of the window on the right-hand side of the panel. I'll give folks a few minutes to submit their questions. And before I do that, just wanted to provide a bit of a summary around Syncry in case you are experiencing some of these challenges and looking for a vendor who can partner with you on, again, working through them and working towards solutions. So the way that we think about Syncry is a solution that can help organizations, specifically operators within organizations, really achieve operational excellence. And we do that through our complete data automation platform, which is designed specifically for operations professionals in sales, marketing, customer success. With Syncry, the work that you do is you unify, manage, and sync data that is complete and accurate across your tech stack. And you do this by pre-built drag and drop functions that allow you to normalize data, transform it into the format that downstream systems are expecting. You can enrich it so that it is complete, and you can merge and dedupe it so that, again, it is clean across your systems, all from one place. So we give you a bird's eye view of your fragmented data across your tech stack so that you can get your tech stack fundamentally operating as one complete system. And again, we do that all with a codeless platform that is designed for operators to be incredibly productive and efficient. And if you're looking to learn more about Syncry and our offerings, one, we have an ebook that is a bit independent from our product. It's more of how to think about this data automation problem in the enterprise today. We pulled this ebook together by interviewing over 100 operators and understanding what they do on a daily basis to become more efficient, again, in their day-to-day activities and become more strategic for their businesses. If you want to learn more about our product, there's an on-demand video library that I'll link to in the chat here in a bit. And then we also have a program that we call Data Superheroes, which is interviews with thought leaders in our space, all around identifying best practices, not just in the day-to-day, but also how to grow in your careers as operators. So encourage you to sign up for that bi-weekly newsletter. And again, I'll drop some links in the chat window here in a second. And with that, let's get into the Q&A. So we'll start with Stephanie. Stephanie asks, how can new marketing ops leaders secure buy-in from or communicate value to stakeholders with little functional knowledge of RevOps as a whole? And then there's some context in there as well. Daryl, do you want to try to take this one as a marketing ops leader who's often working cross-functionally? How do you communicate buy-in, or how do you communicate value and secure buy-in from cross-functional stakeholders?
Yeah, this is a good question. The way I think about this is really translating ops work and marketing operations work into business terms, or simplified terms that people more of understand. And the one of the things that I think about often is database hygiene and data accuracy and completeness, and why that's important. Because a lot of, let's say, executives or maybe it's sales leadership don't really understand how that connects to revenue, but it does. So finding ways to say, well, by populating 25% more of our database within these key industries, we would get X percentage more a contactable audience, or we would, if this is where we're at in terms of revenue per campaign, it's going to reach X by improving the health of our database. So it's looking at what leaders and other sort of non-revenue ops, non-marketing ops people care about, and then translating what you're doing to that. And it's a really great exercise too, because what you'll find is that some of the things that you're working on don't really map to those goals. And it's a good sort of, looking at yourself, taking a hard look at yourself in the mirror and kind of saying, am I really working on things that are going to be driving value for the business? So it goes both ways, right? You're communicating, but you're also validating if what you're working on is of the highest priority or not.
Got it. And Jeff or Rosalind, do you have any additional perspective on that? Perhaps from RevOps, how you as RevOps partner closely with marketing ops professionals in communicating value?
I think Daryl said it really well. I don't know that I have anything to add on that side. I think definitely, great. I love how he ended with sort of making sure that you always align back to the goals, right? Because oftentimes we get stuck in kind of heads down working on something and pop your head up and realize, hey, this doesn't even matter anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Agreed. All right.
So I'd agree for most of it, right? Because I come from a sales ops background. So there are things in marketing ops that that I'm not going to know on a functional basis. And so I try to start at the problem solving level, at the highest levels. And then as we start to drill down into the specifics, that's when I might trip up just because of my own sales ops background. But making sure you're solving the right problem, clarifying it first, then you can figure out the gap between current state versus that future state.
Got it. And as a follow-on, Jeff, since we got you, you responded to Garrick's question live, or at least in the chat. But how do you think about aligning sales and marketing and ensuring tools are driving, the right productivity metrics across the sales cycle and buyer journey?
So I normally start with making sure that we sit at the same table, not necessarily physically, but just getting together and really outlining, what are our goals? Where are the shared goals between both groups? So at Upkeep, we're generating pipeline from the marketing standpoint for the sales team. And that's the baton pass between, our marketing, sales development, and our sales teams. We have a shared goal to make sure that the pipeline that we have is the very best pipeline that we can bring into the table. So it starts with ICP definitions. Sales and marketing work together to make sure that we're targeting the right companies, making sure they're the right fit for our product, our profile, and the problems we're solving for. Second is really developing definitions around, what is an opportunity or a conversation, whatever it is on the buyer's journey. Make sure we have clear, crystal definitions, and then starting to define, activities and productivity ratios that are well defined between both groups. And once we have that, we have shared goals, shared definitions. Now we can start to get to a rhythm on reporting the business. And once we get beyond just reporting the business, that's about advising the business. So looking for trends, patterns, ways we can improve things, shorten time durations. And so that idea of putting sales and marketing together, working as one team, even though maybe some of the activities might be different, they're all running towards the same direction. And that's where I typically like to partner.
Awesome. And Rosalind, a question for you, and perhaps the last question of the panel. There's always more tech and automations to build. So how do you advise this audience to think about roadmap planning?
From a tech stack perspective?
I think so. Yeah, it seems like that's the intent of the question. So
yeah, I think we always get this question around what's the ideal tech stack, right? And I think there is no ideal tech stack for everybody. It's not a one size fits all. But I think we've almost I feel like we're kind of beating a dead horse. But I feel like really looking at the goals, right? Looking at your goals, looking at use cases? What are you trying to solve? And then bring in the right technology that's going to solve those problems or solve those challenges at the right time. Right? Because there's tons of great technology out there that do amazing things for you, but the tech is only going to work as much as you configure and set it up and you have processes that run it, right? I hear a lot of companies or people say, oh, I'm going to buy, X tool because we have X problem, but the tool is only going to help enable you to execute upon your process, execute upon your policies, and administer sort of what you're trying to do. But make sure that you're really clear on, before buying a tool, what's the use case? What are you trying to solve for? And make sure that technology will accommodate and solve for those use cases. And I would just add that the other thing that we're always looking for, especially now with so much technology, is consolidation, right? So if you can purchase a platform or an offering that is going to solve 2 or more of your business cases, definitely go with that.
Yeah, that is a great point. And actually, yet another reason why we built Syncry the way that we did is because we started to see this sprawling landscape of point solutions. One focused on data quality, one focused on lead to account matching, one focused on merge and dedupe, and it just becomes really difficult to manage. Even when all that investment is focused on one system, if you then have a disparate set of solutions focused on, say, your marketing stack than you do for your sales stack, it just becomes, again, perhaps operationally inefficient as a foundation, which is hard to achieve excellence from. So, Daryl, any other advice around roadmap planning, specifically as it relates, say, to the automations and the templates that you build and how you scale yourself as an individual or as a team?
So an interesting thing to think about is to take a look at sort of the goals that you have and the business goals, and then you conduct a gap analysis, which means you're listing out all of the things that you need to do to get to a goal. And then you'll naturally find that you don't have either the resources or tools to get a part of that done. So that's going to be an important part of it. Because otherwise, if you do it another way, which is like, as you go through work and you find a problem and then you look to buy it, it's not really as strategic, or maybe you just, someone emails you or DMs you and says, take a look at this tool, it's going to change your life. That's kind of, I think, reactionary versus, it's always strategy first and then supported by technology, right? So that's how I like to do it, is say, look, this is the path we want to go down. Are there any tools or platforms that we need that will support us directly to get there? And then you start with that, and then really kind of put things through the ringer when you add tools, because I actually prefer a smaller set of tools, and that's just like kind of my own personal preference.
Got it. Jeff, any closing thoughts on your end?
No, I just want to say thank you. It's been really fun.
Yeah, thank you so much to this panel. Really appreciate you taking an hour out of your days to share your wisdom with the broader operations community and the Rev Genius community. So can't thank you enough. Again, really appreciate it. Thank you for attending, everyone. And know that, we'll distribute this recording in an hour or so. So again, thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye.